Well, hello. My name is Anthony Sicaro. I'm founder and president of Providence Financial and Insurance Services, located in the heart of the San Fernando Valley in Woodland Hills, California. I'm also an estate planning attorney, and for 5 years running, I was host of the Providence Financial Retirement Show, which aired every Saturday at 4 o'clock p.m. on AM 870 KRL Lays The Answer. And periodically, I like to do videos to update my clients with regards to what's going on in the economic environment, or, as is the case in this particular video, to just provide some general information about some things that I think is important for my clients to be aware of. So I can't pick up the phone and call every one of you individually as I would love to do. So this is my preferred method of communication when I want to get information to my client base. And if you are a client of mine, you know how much I appreciate your business and thank you for your trust and your loyalty. So in this video, there are a couple of 5 or 6 different items that I want to discuss. Let me just give them to you as kind of a rundown, and then we'll talk about them individually, but this will let you know what I want to discuss here. I want to talk about our office reopening again. I want to talk about the fact that you've probably seen a lot of your BDCs sold recently. I'm going to talk about why that is. We're going to talk a little bit about the fact that a lot of you have some extra cash in your portfolios. Again, why is that? We're also going to talk about what we're doing with that extra cash. We've made a change, so we're going to update you on that. And then we're going to talk about your TD Ameritrade Statements and the fact that I've gotten some questions from you as far as why there's so much stocks in your TD Ameritrade account. So I want to address that as well. And then I want to talk just a minute about our client appreciation event. So that's what's on the rundown for the next maybe 5 or 10 minutes, maybe 15 minutes of this video, however long it takes me to pass the information to you. So first things first, when COVID hit, our office shut down like everybody else. And between whatever time that was, I think it was sometime in March until now, my entire staff has been working home-based. And they love it. I've been working out of my home. I love it. The biggest problem I have is my wife told me the other day that I need to start putting on sunscreen because I'm getting sunburned, because half the times I'm talking with you, I'm walking around on my back patio. So it's really just a fun place to be. And I love being able to see the kids in between meetings and not have to drive home. So it's been a big blessing. And I've often joked that the biggest problem I'm going to have is, trying to get everybody back to the office. Crystal lives out in Lancaster, so it often takes her an hour and a half or 2 to get to the office every day, just depending on traffic. And, of course, even if you live just 20 miles away, it could take you an hour to get to the office. So we are going to be reopening, and we're reopening officially on June 22nd. Which is this Monday coming up. And so reopening means that there will always be someone here back at the office, but my staff is going to work part-time from home. I'm going to join them as well. So we want to keep the traffic in here to a minimal. And there's really a whole list of requirements that someone has to meet to be able to come in. And there's a whole list of requirements that we as an employer have to meet in order for our team members to come back. This place is going to be more sterile than a hospital, I have to tell you, just because of all the requirements. So I don't need to get into the rules and regulations as far as what we have to do here for our employees, except what affects you. It is going to be sterilized. Everything's going to be clean, thoroughly sterilized, every night. There are going to be rules for you as clients coming in. Got to wear a mask, and there's going to be a big sign on the front of our door that basically says, stop if you meet any of these symptoms and you can't come in. That's going to be true for our clients, for non-clients that want to visit with us, for delivery drivers. And these are all really either laws or guidelines that have been put out by the County of Los Angeles. So we have to follow these rules, and it might be a little bit inconvenient, not for you, I think more just for the processes of our firm. But as long as you have a mask and you haven't had a fever over 101.4, 100.4, I think is what the number is, and you haven't visited China and some of the other countries that are listed, and really just a kind of a checklist, then we'd love to have you here. Of course, we do everything by appointment, so you'll want to schedule an appointment with us. And one thing I've learned, and I think a lot of our clients have learned, is that we can accomplish just as much over GoToMeeting or over the phone as we can in person. So we've taken on more clients than ever that are out of state, or clients that are maybe at a distant, where we've been able to do GoToMeeting. And I think people are realizing that it's just as effective, essentially, as being in office. So if you don't want to come into the office, then certainly you don't have to. But Monday's the official date. Bear with us, as we do have some new regulations that we have to follow and so on. So appreciate that. Something else I want to discuss is our client appreciation event. And it turns out that this year, much to my chagrin, we're not going to be doing that. That's my favorite event throughout the year. I love our client appreciation event. It's a chance to go around and shake hands with everyone. And for those of you that have been to one of our client appreciation events, you know how dynamic it is. It's 2.5, 3 hours where I get a chance to speak with all of you for what's supposed to be 20 minutes, but usually turns out to be 30 minutes or so about what's going on in the environment and things that I think you need to know. But I love doing that. I love getting it once a year, getting together as a group, and the environment is just electric. But we can't do it this year because we don't know what's going to happen. We've had a place booked, the Odyssey, where we did it last year. We were planning on doing it again this year, and we've had it booked for November 16th. But they want some guarantees and they want some deposits. We've already put some deposits down, but we're at the point where we have to make some decisions, and the challenge is we don't know. And there's a lot more to it than just saying this is what we're going to do. I mean, if you've ever tried to throw a party for 300 or 400 people, we've got to have the entertainment, we've got to have everything in place, we've got to secure the room, we've got to guarantee a certain number of meals and food, and it's just right now we don't know what's going to happen. I think that we can guess best case scenario is everyone's still going to have to social distance, right? So I don't think by November we're going to be in a position where there's no masks and no gloves and everyone can do whatever they want. I don't think that's coming for many, many months to come. So even if nothing gets worse, even if we don't have a second outbreak, trying to put 3 or possibly even 400 people in a room with everyone 6 feet apart, that dynamic is not there. You guys don't get a mingle, and a lot of you guys know each other. We do a lot of referrals, so the reality is that it's just not going to work. So we've decided to cancel it. The best case scenario, it probably wouldn't be good because you guys would have to distance yourselves too much, and we might need twice as much space as we really need. The worst case scenario is we have a whole relapse and cases break out, and we can't even do it at all. So somewhere between those extremes is just a decision not to do it. So I love doing it. We will plan on resuming it in years to come, but just not for this year. So wanted to also talk a little bit about your TD Ameritrade statements. I've gotten this question several times. I actually just got it again yesterday, and it reminded me when I do my next video that I wanted to talk about it. But a lot of you have emailed me or called me and said, hey, it looks like I have 50% stocks in my portfolio, but I thought we weren't doing stocks, so I'm confused. Help me. And the reason that you're confused, and rightfully so, is because TD Ameritrade, this big multi-trillion-dollar firm that is essentially the custodian that we use to hold all of your monies, TD Ameritrade calls things stock that we're not classifying as stock. There's the technical version of stock, there's the legal version of stock, and then there's the practical version of stock. And these are all different words. They all mean different things to different people. So the reality is most of the stock that TD Ameritrade is calling stock in your portfolio is either preferred stock or business development companies. Okay. Now let's talk about preferred stock. Preferred stock is not common stock, but it's still stock. It has the name stock in it, but it doesn't act like common stock. When a company issues common stock, there's no promise to pay a dividend. There's no guarantee they're ever going to pay a dividend. You don't buy the common stock for the dividend. You buy the common stock for the potential growth, and if it pays a dividend, that's really the icing on the cake. But when a company issues a preferred stock, they promise to pay a dividend. So when you buy the preferred stock, you can count on the dividend. And because we focus on investing for income, the reality is that preferred stocks will give you the promise to pay that dividend, and you can count on that dividend. So common stock is not preferred stock, but they both have the name stock in there. They're both equity. So TD Ameritrade dubs them both as stock. But preferred stock is a completely different share or different class of stock. As a matter of fact, when you hear us talking on the radio, either my radio show or you hear me being interviewed on TV or any professional, if we're talking about common stock on TV, it's always stock. But if we're talking about preferred stock on TV, then we have to say preferred stock. Otherwise, everybody would be confused because it's still technically stock, but different class of stock. And that's what's happening with TD Ameritrade is they classify preferred stock as stock. And it's not uncommon for you to have anywhere between 30 and 50% or even a little more of your portfolio in preferred stock. So it might say 50% preferred or 50% stock, and you think, well, what does Anthony have me in? No, it's not common stock, it's preferred stock. So I think that's important to understand. BDCs. Let's talk about business development companies. A business development company is a company that loans money to other companies. And there's lots of reasons why medium-sized companies and large companies would want to borrow money from business development companies. A company like Disney might want to come up with $50 million that is not a lot of money for Disney. So they don't want to go issue bonds to come up with that money, or they don't want to issue more stock. So they might turn to a business development company to borrow the money. And of course, it's kind of like getting an unsecured business loan. So they have to generally pay more interest, just like if you and I want to get an unsecured personal loan. A lot of other companies, more medium-sized companies, will turn to business development companies because they have to. A lot of companies out there are very big companies, but they're not the Fortune 500s. But they need cash, they need capital, and they're growing, but they're not the Fortune 500s, and they're kind of stuck because they're not quite big enough to access the stock market or the bond market, but they're too big for the banks and credit unions. So they will turn to BDCs, and BDC will do as much research as humanly possible to make sure that these companies are viable and not going to be any issues, and then they'll loan them. They'll loan them money in terms of millions of dollars. So a BDC is kind of like a bank to businesses. I think that's a good way of looking at it. Maybe like a hard money lender to businesses, if you will. But the reality is that when you invest in a BDC, or when we buy a BDC for you, you are buying the common stock of a company that loans money to other companies. So legally and technically, BDCs are in fact stock, are in fact common stock. But right now, I think we have certainly less than 15% across the board in BDCs for our clients, and a lot of times even less than 10%. But the reality is that is common stock that's in your portfolio. So if you see that your portfolio has, say 50% of common stock, it's probably because there's 40% of preferred stock in there and 10% of BDCs that are equaling that 50%. So it's not the 50% of the common stock as you would think about it, but it's still listed as stock. So hopefully that gives you a broad answer as to why your statement seems to, say things that are maybe even contrary to what we have talked about before. And I wanted to I've gotten enough questions on that where I felt like even if you haven't called me to ask me, just because you trust us, and I appreciate that, I wanted you to know why it seems like there's so much stock in your portfolio. The BDCs really are common stock, but right now a lot of the BDCs are yielding north of 7%. I've seen some that are even yielding 8, 9, and 10% recently. So they are common stock, but they've got good yields in them, right? As well. And another thing about BDCs is because they loan these money to businesses, they have to pay a high percentage back. I think it's 90% that they're actually required to pay back to the shareholders in the form of a dividend, because they're getting as they get the interest payments back from the companies that they've loaned money to. So they have to pay that back to you. So unlike most common stock where you really can't count on the income, you can count on the income from a BDC because they have to pay it back. And the underlying value of the BDC is based on contract. based on loans. So even though you're buying the common stock of a company, the underlying value is based on loans. So you're indirectly invested in loans by buying the common stock of a BDC. But that is technically stock in your portfolio. But right now, unless you are one of the minor majorities. What do they call that? Like when you say, jumbo shrimp, right? Oxymoron, I think they call that, minor majority. If you're in the minority of my clients who have some money in the stock market, well, then of course that skews your numbers as well, because you're taking the risk of putting some money in the market. But if you are not in the stock market or not wanting to be in the stock market, and you see that you've got a lot of stocks in your portfolios, that's why. A lot of it's preferred stock, and just really a small percentage of it is the BDCs that we've talked about. So hopefully that helps. If you have any questions about that, let me know. But let's carry that further a little bit, because I want to talk about BDCs even a little bit more, because I made a decision for all of you guys that I just want you to be I want you to be aware of, okay? And we've talked about BDCs. You have a good point, a good knowledge base of what they are at this point, just based on the last 5 minutes of conversation. But I also want to share with you that BDCs are really more of a retail product. They're not generally institutional owned. They're owned more by retail investors. And because the underlying contract or the underlying value of the BDC, the business development company, is based on contract, when we started using BDCs within the last probably 5 years ago, somewhere around there, when we started adding them to our clients' portfolios, we didn't really expect that they would be as volatile as they have been. And when the market came down 37%, I think that was the number from the peak in February to the low in March, 37%, a lot of the BDCs came down even more than that. And that kind of caught us off guard, caught me off guard. It caught Sound Income Strategies off guard. The reality is that this wasn't expected. Now we know why. It's easy to analyze in hindsight what happened. And one of the reasons why we had really, generally 15 to 20% in your portfolio of BDCs was because we know things can happen. But part of the reason why that happened is because it is a retail product. The retail investors tend to panic more than institutional investors, who really don't panic at all. And because it's a retail product, everything went down further. And we saw that in bonds. A lot of bonds are, yes, institutionally owned, but a lot of bonds are retail owned. And when you do research, you can actually determine which bonds are owned by retail customers versus which bonds are owned by institutions. And by far, the retail bonds went down in value a lot more than the institutionally held bonds. So it was just because of the overall panic where the world started closing up, ordinances started going into place where we had to shelter at home, and people were panicking and looking to sell everything that they possibly could and start hoarding what they could and buying 5 years worth of toilet paper and everything else that went along with it. So everything went down. But BDCs went down a little more. But again, that's because they were retail products. Well, now BDCs have come back up. And they're not up to where they were. But generally, depending on the BDC, they're somewhere up. I believe most BDCs at this point are within about 15% of their all-time highs. And I had a conversation with Sound Income Strategies with regards to what can we do to prepare for the next shoe to drop. As you know, I believe we have another shoe to drop. What can we do? And, part of what I decided to do in working with them is to sell half of the BDCs across the board for everybody. And the reason is because of the fact that I feel so confident that we're going to have another shoe to drop, that this then gives us the firepower to be able to reload the gun and be able to buy this BDCs at a lower price and get just phenomenal yields. So I'm willing to take that risk. So you have probably seen a lot of confirmation statements come through. You've probably noticed more cash in your portfolio than normal. And that's because of the decision that I made to help you. Now, I had to do this across the board. I couldn't call you, nor would I have the manpower or the time to be able to do that. So this was a decision that I made as your advisor across the board to try to really take advantage of the next market drop we have. So what does this mean for you? Well, there's two things for you, immediate ramifications. The first ramification is the fact that you've got more cash in your portfolio. The second ramification is the fact that your income's going to go down a little bit because BDCs are very high yielding. That's one of the reasons we like them in the portfolios. Normally, prior to COVID, they were yielding in the 6, 7, 8 range. And again, I've seen BDCs now that are yielding above 10 because they've come down in price a little bit. Yields act opposite of price. So the fact is that if they go down even more than that, then I'm hoping to get you guys some killer yields really in the next 12 months or 2 years. I don't know when. I mean, that's the problem. I hate to start spouting off time because we don't know. But that's what I'm hoping to do. But for now, by having sold half of it, you're going to see a little less income in your portfolio. That's because we're looking more long-term than short-term. Now, I also want to be clear on the fact that we've sold the BDCs for no other reason than what I just said. We are not worried about the BDCs. Sound Income Strategies has 6 BDCs they work with on a regular basis. They've been in touch with these BDCs. They've been on the public conference calls with the BDCs. They're not worried about the BDCs at all. They're not worried about the value. They're not worried about the BDCs themselves. They're not worried about the contracts underneath, the underlying. So they're not worried about them. This is purely a play to try to give a little extra added value to you as clients. So the reality is that's a decision that I made. So if you had 15 or 20% of your portfolio in BDCs prior, you probably only have 7 to 10% in your portfolio now. Okay. So it's important to understand that. And again, if you have any questions about that, you're welcome to call me. But we're really hoping that it pays off. So you've got more cash in your portfolio, and what we've decided to do is we've decided to go back to investing in the money market mutual fund that we were using prior to COVID. When you have cash in your portfolio, it's only for the reason that we want to use it later. And you're going to see more cash in your portfolio than normal at this point. Your cash isn't earning a whole lot of interest simply because of the fact that, for what I talked about, I want to be able to reload when things go down, even when the preferreds go down or bonds go down. I want to, if you don't have cash available, you can't take advantage of that. So it's a short-term deficit for a long-term gain. You might not quite get much income on your accounts now for the long-term benefit of even more income and potentially even a little bit of growth. But what are we doing with the cash? Well, prior to COVID-19, we had all your cash in a money market mutual fund. This is a mutual fund with money market instruments in it. And it was yielding really between 1.5% and 2% kind of consistently. So that's better than a traditional money market itself will earn. Traditional money market might be 0.1% of 1%. So we had your money there in this money market mutual fund, getting you 1.5% to 2%. It's at least you're getting something while waiting. That's the idea. Well, when COVID happened, we didn't know what was going to happen. We didn't know how bad it was going to be. We certainly didn't predict that 3 months later the market would only be 10% off of its all-time highs. So the money management team, Sound Income Strategies, decided that we wanted the extra safety of having that money in a money market fund, a money market account instead of a money market fund. And the primary reason is the money market accounts are insured. The money market mutual fund is not. Now, we didn't have any reason to believe. I mean, the chances of anything happening with the money market mutual fund and us needing to make that change was extremely slim. But as an added precaution, they made this move, and they just figured, until everything works itself out, they'd rather have that money insured than uninsured. Well, now it's obvious that the money markets aren't going to break the buck. It's obvious none of that's going to happen. So they are now either have or in the process of moving the money market accounts back into the mutual fund for a higher yield. Now, interest rates have come way down. The Federal Reserve has bought hundreds of million trillions of bonds, actually. The balance sheet is almost doubled. So interest rates are lower than they were. So I don't know that you're going to get 1.5 to 2. I'd be highly surprised. I think if you got 1 at this point, you'd probably be lucky. But I'd still rather have you get 1% while waiting. At least it's enough to cover the fees, cover the management fees, or it's not costing you anything until such a time that we can then get you back in the market. So because we've sold the BDCs, you're going to see probably a little less income now. Because the cash is there, and because they're going to move it to the fund, you're going to see a little higher income on the cash. But don't be surprised if you see more cash than normal in your portfolio for the reasons that we just talked about. So I think that's what I wanted to cover on my list. The volatility in the last few days has seemed to come back, starting to come back. I think it was Friday that now went down 1,800 points, if I'm correct, and then it has bounced back since then. So, I put out a video 3 weeks ago about the fact that we're in between rapids. We had come down rapids and we're kind of in the calm water waiting for the next set of rapids. So, and I still think we're there. Or is this next set of rapids starting? I don't know. There's been a lot of economists that do really believe that we could break out on the upside and could break through new highs. If we do so, it's strictly because of the artificial funding of the Federal Reserve. But there's other economists that think that we have a shoe to drop. So, who's right? I don't know. But the reality is I do think we're in the calm before the storm. And I do believe that we do have another major shoe to drop, although it may be months before that happens. We might be looking out to third quarter earnings or even fourth quarter earnings when we start getting estimates of how many people are truly unemployed. Right now, the number's at 13.3% unemployed. But Jerome Powell spoke last week and said that number's off by 3 or 4%. That's why the market went down by 1,800 points, because the day before he had spoken and basically said, no, unemployment's really 3 or 4% higher than that. So there's a lot of things going on. And right now, people are hoping for the best case scenario. The market is pricing in the best case scenario with regards to everything that's going on. They're pricing in the best case scenario with regards to unemployment. I'm thinking that, in another year or two, unemployment will come back down to, the 3.8% where it was at before, or maybe at least within 5%. It's pricing in the fact that no problems happen with China, right? That's taken a back seat, but the Chinese tariffs are still there. It's pricing in the fact that, businesses are going to reopen and the world's going to get back to normal. It's pricing in the fact that COVID-19 doesn't respread, doesn't rekindle itself. So the reality is that the market is pricing in a whole lot of things as the best case scenario. And if any one of these things goes south or doesn't quite work out to be the way that it is, I think it could be the tipping point for just another major, drop in the market. So the good news is you're invested for income, and you've seen all my videos. You know that your dividends and interest are going to remain the same. But right now we've taken some steps to position you for income, to position you for benefit if the market does go down from here. So again, if you're a client of mine, thank you for your trust. Thank you for your business. I don't take it lightly. If you're not a client of mine and you've watched this video, well, thank you for watching. And if you want to call me at the office, have a quick 15-minute phone call, I'd certainly welcome that. You can get our number is 818-887-6443, or you can go online and find us at providencefinancialinc.com. And while you're there, and for you clients as well, if you haven't followed us, once you go to our website, providencefinancialinc.com, click on the YouTube channel in the upper right corner, click follow. You don't have to have an account. And then as soon as these videos come out, you'll be notified. Call me if you have any questions. God bless.